In 1872, at a time when women in the United States did not have the right to vote, Victoria Woodhull made history by becoming the first woman to run for President of the United States. A trailblazing advocate for women's rights, suffrage, and social reform, Woodhull's candidacy challenged the norms of her time and laid the groundwork for future generations of women in politics. This narrative explores the life of Victoria Woodhull, her groundbreaking presidential campaign, and the impact of her bold run on the women's rights movement and American political history.
Victoria Claflin Woodhull was born on September 23, 1838, in Homer, Ohio, into a large and impoverished family. Her early life was marked by hardship, but Woodhull was determined to rise above her circumstances. With little formal education, she developed a keen intellect and a strong will, eventually becoming a successful businesswoman, spiritualist, and activist. In the years leading up to her presidential campaign, Woodhull made a name for herself as a prominent advocate for women's suffrage and social reform. Along with her sister, Tennessee Claflin, she became the first woman to operate a brokerage firm on Wall Street and the first to found a newspaper, Woodhull and Claflin's Weekly, which she used as a platform to promote her radical ideas on women's rights, labor reforms, and free love. Woodhull's beliefs were controversial, particularly her advocacy for free love, which argued that women should have the freedom to marry, divorce, and bear children without government interference. Her outspoken nature and willingness to challenge societal norms made her a polarizing figure, but also a pioneering one in the fight for gender equality.
In 1872, Victoria Woodhull announced her candidacy for the presidency as the candidate of the Equal Rights Party, a small but influential political group that championed women's rights and social reforms. Her decision to run for the highest office in the land was unprecedented, as women were not yet legally allowed to vote, let alone run for president. This bold move placed her at the center of a national debate on women's rights and the role of women in public life. Woodhull's candidacy was not without significant challenges. As a woman, she faced intense scrutiny and opposition from both the public and the press. She was ridiculed and slandered in the media, which portrayed her as a dangerous radical unfit for public office. Her personal life, including her advocacy for free love and her associations with spiritualism, became fodder for scandal, further complicating her campaign. Moreover, the political landscape of the time was dominated by men, and Woodhull had little support from mainstream politicians or suffragists, many of whom viewed her as too radical and feared that her candidacy might harm the broader women's suffrage movement. Despite these obstacles, Woodhull remained steadfast in her conviction that women should have an equal voice in government, and that she had the right to run for president.
Victoria Woodhull's presidential campaign was groundbreaking in many ways. She was the first woman to publicly challenge the political status quo by declaring her candidacy for the presidency, and she used her campaign as a platform to advocate for women's suffrage, workers' rights, and social justice. Her running mate, Frederick Douglass, was an abolitionist leader and former slave, symbolizing her commitment to civil rights and equality for all. Woodhull's campaign was marked by a series of bold and provocative speeches, in which she called for an end to political corruption, the abolition of the death penalty, and the equal treatment of women and minorities. She argued that women had a natural right to participate in government and that the United States could not truly be a democracy until women were granted full political rights. However, her campaign faced significant hurdles. On November 2, 1872, just days before the presidential election, Woodhull was arrested on charges of obscenity for publishing an article in her newspaper that accused the influential preacher Henry Ward Beecher of adultery. This arrest effectively ended her campaign, as she was unable to vote or actively participate in the election. In the end, she did not receive any electoral votes, and Ulysses S. Grant won the presidency.
Although Victoria Woodhull did not win the presidency, her candidacy was a landmark moment in American history. She shattered the political glass ceiling by proving that a woman could run for the highest office in the land, paving the way for future generations of women in politics. Her campaign brought national attention to the issues of women's rights and suffrage, helping to advance the cause of gender equality. Woodhull's life after the 1872 election was marked by continued activism, though she eventually moved to England, where she lived for the rest of her life. Her legacy as a pioneering advocate for women's rights and social reform has been recognized in recent years, with historians acknowledging her significant contributions to the suffrage movement and her role as a trailblazer for women in politics. Today, Victoria Woodhull is remembered as a visionary who dared to challenge the status quo and advocate for a more just and equal society. Her candidacy for president was a bold statement of her belief in the fundamental rights of women and her commitment to social change. Though she did not win the election, her impact on American politics and the women's rights movement is undeniable.
Victoria Woodhull's 1872 presidential campaign was a groundbreaking and courageous act that challenged the deeply ingrained gender norms of her time. Her candidacy opened the door for future women to run for public office and contributed to the broader struggle for women's suffrage and equality. As we reflect on Woodhull's legacy, we are reminded of the importance of perseverance and the power of challenging the status quo in the pursuit of justice and equality.